Barron Trump's day was like any other, a whirlwind of meetings and high expectations. But the moment his feet hit the pavement outside his office, something stopped him cold. There, on the busy city street, a familiar face, one he hadn't seen in years, stared up at him. The woman who had once cared for him, the nanny who had been his guiding light in his childhood, now sat on the curb, her eyes distant and hollow. Her clothes, tattered and dirty, hung loosely on her fragile frame. Barron's heart sank. How had this happened? He remembered her warmth, the way she used to make him feel safe, her gentle voice that soothed him in times of fear. She had been the one constant in his childhood, always there when he needed her. But now, as she sat there, a ghost of the person he knew, Barron struggled to find words. For a long moment, he stood frozen, torn between the life he knew and the reality before him. His mind screamed to act, but his feet stayed rooted to the ground. People passed by oblivious. But Barron couldn't just walk away. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It was a call to something greater, something deeper. He took a breath, knowing he had to do something. As Barron stood there, staring at the woman who had once been a central part of his world, his mind drifted back to another time. A time when she had been more than just a caregiver. She had been his protector, his confidant. He could still see her face clearly, her warm smile as she gently tucked him into bed after long days, the soft hum of a lullaby filling the room. She was always there, the one constant in his ever-changing world. He remembered her hands, rough with years of hard work, yet always so gentle as they smoothed his hair or wiped his tears. The way she comforted him when he had nightmares, her soothing voice whispering that everything would be all right. She was the one who taught him the value of kindness, even when the world outside seemed cold and unkind. But now, standing before him, she was a far cry from the woman who had once filled his life with warmth and love. The woman he had known was lost, replaced by someone unrecognizable. Barron's chest tightened with the weight of the memories, and the guilt began to seep in. How could he have let this happen? How could someone who had cared for him with such devotion fall so far? His heart ached as he thought about the life she once had, and the life she now found herself living, alone, cold, forgotten. Barron stood there, struggling to reconcile the person before him with the memories of the woman who had once been like family. His mind raced. The world around him continued to rush by, indifferent to the profound moment unfolding at his feet. How could he just walk away? She had cared for him when no one else had, but now, she was a shadow of herself, sitting alone in the harsh reality of the streets. His heart felt heavy, torn between the life he had built and the woman who had shaped so much of his childhood. He could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on him. Help her or turn away? The voices in his head were at war. She might not even want your help, one thought whispered. It's not your responsibility anymore, another insisted. But Barron couldn't silence the part of him that screamed, this is your chance to give back. He had everything, wealth, comfort, security. But all of that felt empty now, as if it meant nothing in the face of this moment. With a deep breath, Barron made his decision. He would help her, no matter the consequences. She had once given him everything. Now, it was his turn to return that kindness. Barron stepped forward, his heart determined, his mind resolved. This wasn't just a gesture, it was a promise to rewrite the story of someone who had been forgotten. As Barron made the decision to help, the weight of it all began to settle in. He couldn't simply snap his fingers and fix everything. There was so much to figure out. But one thing was clear. He wasn't walking away. He couldn't. He wouldn't. He walked over to the woman, his heart racing, every step filled with purpose. She looked up, her eyes clouded with disbelief. She didn't recognize him at first, and why would she? The world had changed her too much. Are you okay? Barron asked, his voice softer than he intended, laced with a quiet urgency. For a long moment, She said nothing. Then, with a hoarse whisper, she shook her head. The words that followed broke something inside him. I've lost everything. I don't even know how I ended up here. Her voice cracked, like a fragile piece of glass about to shatter. Barron felt the sting of her pain, and the resolve in him grew stronger. He couldn't just stand by. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number, his hands slightly trembling. He reached out to his closest allies, made calls, arranged for her to be taken to a safe place. His mind raced with thoughts of what to do next. This wasn't just a simple gesture, it was a lifeline. But it had to be done right. There was no turning back now. He had to make sure she never had to feel this hopeless again. The moment Barron made the call, it felt as though the world itself shifted. He didn't just make arrangements for her to be sheltered. He was offering her a chance to rebuild, to rediscover her strength, and to leave behind the desolation that had become her daily existence. His heart pounded as he waited for the team to arrive, watching the woman who had once been his caretaker, now so fragile and broken, clinging to a small shred of hope. When the car pulled up, Barron gently guided her inside, his hand hovering around her as though he might break her with a single touch. She looked at him, her face twisted in confusion. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Her voice was barely a whisper, full of disbelief. Barron met her gaze, his own eyes brimming with emotion. Because you took care of me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn. Her eyes welled with tears, her entire body trembling as if the weight of those words finally reached her heart. She hesitated but then nodded, the first spark of trust in her eyes. The car moved away, and with it, her past of despair seemed to fade into the distance. A new life was beginning, one that Barron had given her, one she never thought possible. And with that, Barron felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of peace that came from knowing he had done the right thing. As the days passed, the woman slowly began to settle into her new life, though the process was anything but easy. The warmth of her new surroundings was a stark contrast to the cold, unforgiving streets she had called home for so long. At first, she struggled to let go of the pain that had consumed her for years, the memories of hardship that had taken root deep within her. The house felt foreign, too large, too quiet. It was a space meant for healing, yet she found herself overwhelmed by the very comfort that Barron had worked so hard to provide. She spent hours staring out the window, her mind racing with questions. Was this real? Could she really leave the past behind? Every room she walked into seemed to echo with uncertainty. Yet slowly, something inside her shifted. She began to feel the weight lift, piece by piece. The silence no longer suffocated her. It became a space where she could breathe, think, and, eventually, hope again. Barron checked on her often, not with pity, but with quiet, steady support. He knew the road to healing wasn't quick, but he had given her a chance to begin anew. And that, he realized, was the most important step of all. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, she had a path to follow. One evening, as Barron sat in the quiet of his office, he received a message, a simple text from the woman he had helped. It was a short, hurried note, but it carried with it more emotion than any letter he had ever received. I don't know how to say this, but thank you. You've changed my life. I don't know where I'd be without you. Barron felt a lump rise in his throat as he read her words. There had been no expectation of thanks, no desire for recognition. But in that moment, he realized just how much his act of kindness had meant to her. It wasn't just a roof over her head, a warm meal, or the comfort of a safe space. It was a lifeline, a gift of dignity, and the restoration of hope. The next time he saw her, there was something different in her eyes. The shadows that had once clouded her expression were now softened by a newfound strength. She met his gaze and, for the first time since he'd met her again, smiled, not just with her lips, but with her heart. I thought I was invisible to the world, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But you saw me, and I'll never forget that." Barron swallowed hard, fighting back his own tears. In that moment, he understood something deeper than he ever had before. Kindness had not only changed her life, it had transformed his as well. As Barron sat alone in his study later that evening, the weight of everything he had done settled on him. The quiet of the room felt heavy, filled with the echoes of a decision that had altered the course of his life, and hers. He couldn't shake the image of her face, the woman who had once been so full of life and love, now standing tall again, reborn by an act of kindness. But as he thought more, he realized this wasn't just about her transformation. It was about his own. Before this, Barron had been used to a life where everything was meticulously planned, where success was defined by wealth and power. But this act, simple, selfless, and born from the depths of compassion, had shown him something far more meaningful. He had been so wrapped up in the demands of his world, the world that expected so much of him, that he had forgotten how to truly connect with people, how to be present for those who needed him most. Now, as he reflected, Barron understood that helping her wasn't just a chance to repay a debt. It was a chance for him to rediscover something profound, something he hadn't even realized he had lost, his own humanity. In that stillness, Barron smiled to himself, a deep sense of peace filling his heart. He hadn't just changed her life, she had changed his, and he would carry that lesson with him forever. Months passed, and with every day, the woman's transformation became more evident. The weight that had once been so heavy on her shoulders slowly lifted, replaced by a quiet strength. Barron watched from a distance, proud yet humbled by the resilience she had shown. The woman who had once sat broken on the streets now radiated a quiet confidence. She had found not just a roof over her head, but a sense of purpose. One afternoon, Barron visited her new home, a small, cozy place she had decorated herself. The walls were filled with pictures of her past, of memories that once seemed lost. There was a glow in her eyes now, a lightness in her step that Barron hadn't seen before. "I never thought I'd be here," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I thought my story was over, that there was no hope for someone like me." She paused, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "But you reminded me that it wasn't. You gave me a chance to start again." Barron's heart swelled. He hadn't expected to hear such gratitude, but there it was, real and raw. He had given her a home, but she had given him something even more precious, an understanding of what it truly meant to make a difference. And in that moment, Barron realized that the act of kindness had come full circle. It wasn't just about saving her. It was about saving both of them. As the days turned into weeks, Barron began to see something extraordinary unfold. What started as a single act of kindness, a moment of clarity on a crowded street, had blossomed into something far greater than he could have imagined. Not only had the woman found healing, but her story began to spread. People around her saw the change, the courage she now carried. She became an inspiration to those who had given up, to those who believed they were too far gone to be saved. One evening, as Barron sat with her over tea, she told him something that struck him deeply. "You gave me a second chance, but now I'm giving others theirs." She had started volunteering at a local shelter, offering warmth and hope to others who were lost, just as she once was. Her words, simple yet powerful, left an imprint on Barron's heart. The ripple effect of one act of kindness had the power to touch many lives, to create a wave of change. As he walked away from her home that evening, Barron felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known before. He realized that kindness wasn't just about changing one life. It was about inspiring a cycle that could impact the world. You never know the difference a simple act of kindness can make. Reach out, offer help, and watch how it changes lives. Let's keep the ripple going.